It's 4:07 on this Thursday afternoon, and good afternoon to you. Today happens to mark the anniversary of the lynching of Emmett Till, as well as the March on Washington. We're going to talk about that later in the show. We'll also talk with Greg Dunmore, PulseBeat.tv, and we're going to talk with Lamar Johnson from somewhere in Maryland, I believe. He's executive producer in partnership with PBS, and the show is Kehinde Wiley, an Economy of Grace. But first, we're going to go to Southfield to check in with the man of a law firm. They've been dubbed as the super lawyers. Attorney Gerald Thurswell, the founder of Thurswell Law, represents people injured or killed as a result of auto, bus, truck, and motorcycle accidents, birth injuries, as well as medical malpractice. The name probably sounds familiar to you because he represents the family of Renisha McBride. He also represents the family of the young man who was killed in Northland Mall by security guards there. But today he's going to talk with us about the latest development in the Renisha McBride case, and we're talking about a $10 million civil lawsuit that has been filed against Theodore Wafer, of course, who was found guilty in Wayne County Circuit Court of killing Renisha McBride. Good afternoon, Counselor.
Good afternoon, Mildred. How are you today?
I'm good. Let's talk for a minute here about these civil lawsuits and how they are honored. I want you to tell us, is it the personal wealth of the individual? Is the insurance carrier? If someone is a homeowner, tell us how that works out.
Okay. The family sought justice through the criminal courts, and the defendant was found guilty of second-degree murder, manslaughter. Now, going through the civil justice system, they've taken the life of a daughter and a sister, and we're trying to receive monetary compensation for that loss. And this happens in all cases when somebody's either intentional acts or negligent acts take somebody's life. We're entitled to obtain compensation. The amount of money that we sought, we put $10 million because if you talk to the parents and you talk to the two sisters of Renisha, that's probably the value of her life. The next question, and you raised that properly, was how are you ever going to collect $10 million or how much will you collect? The homeowner's insurance policy only covers negligent acts. And if it's deemed that this was a negligent act, then we would be able to go after the homeowner's insurance. This man, Theodore Wafer, had a home in Dearborn Heights that was totally paid for, and then we understand that he had a 401k. Now, depending on the terms of the 401k, we may be able to go after that money to obtain compensation for the loss of Renisha's life. So we're going to go after the home. We'll go after his 401k. It's probably not possible to go after the homeowners because this was not found to be a negligent act.
That's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Now, when these kinds of cases go to court, and I know that when we're talking about legal cases, you can just guess on numbers. But generally, how long does it take for this kind of case to be adjudicated?
It's very interesting. In this case, it should not take long at all because there's been a determination in the criminal justice system that beyond a reasonable doubt, he caused her death as a result of an intentional act. So the question of whether or not we should collect or not collect, that should be done relatively quickly. Then the next question is, in a lot of cases, the next question would be, what was the value of Renisha's life? Clearly, the value of her life greatly exceeds the value of his home in Dearborn Heights and greatly exceeds whatever he would have in his 401k. He'd been employed at Wayne County Airport for 15 years. He's not going to be using his house, and he's not going to be using that 401k. He'll be sentenced on September 3rd. So he's going to have free room and board through the state of Michigan.
This is extremely educational. I know that there are a lot of people out there who wonder about cases like this, and then they learn that we're talking about a man from Dearborn Heights, and it's a $10 million lawsuit. He's going to prison. How do you collect? So this is an educational moment here, I must say.
Do you remember the case within the last year or two where there was an off-duty police officer who was having a party at his home?
Yes.
And this young girl was at the house in the backyard at the party dancing, and apparently she put her arms around the off-duty police officer, and he had a gun in his waist that no one could see because his T-shirt was covering it. And by accident, she touched the gun went off and killed her. That case was deemed a negligence case, because the officer never should have had his loaded gun with the safety off concealed underneath his shirt. So I represented the family of that young woman, and the off-duty police officer's homeowner's insurance paid money for the loss of that young lady's life. That's different because that was a negligent death with a firearm, whereas in this case, this has been deemed an intentional act, found guilty of second-degree murder.
You know, as I listen to you explain this to us, I mean, it seems very clear to me that oftentimes families will have to deal with situations like these, and they don't understand, they don't know, and so they never get any kind of restitution for the loss of their loved ones because they don't know.
That's why it's advisable when you lose a family member as a result of something that may be considered to either be negligence and or an intentional act, that you have to contact an attorney with a lot of experience in those types of cases. I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I think I told you once before when we were talking, I represented some of the members of the family in the Malice Green case a long, long time ago. So I'm very familiar with these types of cases where either an intentional act or a negligent act results in the death of someone, other than the auto accident cases that we handle, other than the medical malpractice cases we handle. We also handle cases where there's police misconduct, or like in this particular case, there was a murder. But you should consult an attorney with experience in these cases if, God forbid, you've lost a loved one or a loved one has been seriously injured.
We're going to go to break, and when we come back, Counselor, Attorney Gerald Thurswell, I want to ask you about the killing in Arizona yesterday, the 9-year-old girl being taught how to use an Uzi, and that instruction resulted in the death of her instructor. The number to the Thurswell Law Firm is 866-354-5544. That's 866-354-5544. If you have a question for Attorney Thurswell, call him here at the Mildred Gaddis Show at 313-568-1200. That's 568-1200. We'll be right back. Detroit. Attorney Gerald Thurswell of the Thurswell Law Firm, my guest here on the Mildred Gaddis Show. Anthony is in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, Anthony, I have to ask my question first. Attorney Thurswell, here we have a 9-year-old. Here, the situation is a 9-year-old child is at a gun range. She's accompanied by her parents. She is, per her parents' instruction, she is being taught how to use an Uzi. Something goes awry, the instructor is killed. In the state of Arizona, it is legal to train a 9-year-old to fire weapons, and one of the owners said they've trained children as young as 5 years old to use weapons. Is there any liability here?
It's very interesting because we were talking earlier about a negligent act resulting in harm to someone else. The child's parents' homeowner's insurance may very, very well provide compensation for the instructor who was killed, because this clearly was a negligent act on behalf of the child. The child had the Uzi, and apparently you're only supposed to take like 3 or 4 shots because the kickback on it is such that the gun will back up, or I don't know the word, back up or something like that, and the gun you lose control of the gun in any event, and that's how he got killed. So it's very, very possible that the girl's parents' homeowner's insurance would be able to provide some monetary compensation for the family of the instructor who was killed as a result of this. Very, very tragic tragic all around. I don't know why in the world someone wants a 9-year-old to learn how to use an Uzi. I mean, it's incredible. The child should have a BB gun, maybe.
We've got Anthony from Phoenix, Arizona, listening to us out there. Anthony, you're on with Attorney Gerald Thurswell.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question, not for that incident, but a malpractice lawsuit.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I was operated on in 2008, and upon that operation, I was left partially paralyzed and have permanent nerve damage, which I have constant pain all the time, and I have to take a strong pain medication, which they say they don't have no pain medication for me at all. But I was told a couple years later through a surgeon that was going to do something to me. He refused to do it. He said I was injured. I said, what do you mean? I wasn't in an automobile accident. He said, well, you went in one way and came out another way. And I conferred with some lawyers, and they told me they wouldn't take the case, but they said if I get worse than that, contact them back again. So I'm trying to find out what legal course do I have, or did I pass statute of limitation?
This is 2008?
Yes.
Okay, in Michigan, there's a statute of limitations when an adult gets injured as a result of medical malpractice. And medical malpractice really means negligence on behalf of a professional, a physician, a nurse. But the statute of limitations in your case would be 2 years, and that means if you don't file a lawsuit within 2 years, you're barred. You can never make a claim against anyone.
Therefore, I didn't know. I didn't find out till a couple years later from a surgeon that looked at me and looked at my results, and he came back and said, well, you was injured. That's it.
Those cases are extremely difficult. There's a discovery rule when a reasonable person should have discovered the malpractice, and then you have 6 months from the date a reasonable person would have discovered the malpractice. But the court's decisions in Michigan make it extremely difficult. They say you should have discovered the malpractice real early on. So we usually go by the 2-year statute of limitations when an adult is injured as a result of potential malpractice. But the law firms here in Michigan, we all charge just a percentage. It's a contingency. You have nothing to lose if you suspect that you've been injured as a result of a physician or a nurse negligence, malpractice, to consult a lawyer, let them get the medical records, let them review them, have an expert look at them, and see if you have a case.
Anthony?
Look at you right now. Look at the position you're in now because you didn't act in a timely fashion. You've got nothing to lose to contact the lawyer and have him investigate it in a timely fashion.
Thanks for calling, Anthony. It's good to hear from you. 568-1200, that's the number here. Robert in Windsor, you're on the Mildred Gaddis Show with Attorney Gerald Thurswell.
Hi, I had just caught on to the end of the conversation when you were talking about the 9-year-old girl with the Uzi, and judging by what I hear on a lot of extreme conservative talk radio and on the internet, I believe that this 9-year-old girl, her parents let her learn to use a Uzi because they truly believe that the Kenyan communists in the White House is going to take over America, and they need to teach their children how to defend themselves when the revolution comes. I believe that there's a lot who truly believe that, and I believe that's why that 9-year-old girl was being taught to use a Uzi, because they think that the president's a tyrant and eventually he's not going to leave office and take over the country. And if you listen to some of these people who call into some of the right-wing shows, they truly believe that stuff, and I believe that's what they're teaching their children, and I believe that's why this tragedy happened with this 9-year-old girl. That's all.
Hey, thanks for listening to us over in Windsor, Robert. Good to hear you.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too. Attorney Thurswell, I want you to walk us through what to do and what not to do when you find yourself in a situation, whether it's violence, whether it's medical or whatever. To hear this man from Phoenix, Arizona call in and talk about how he's suffering now, and the statute of limitations have run out on him of sorts. So tell people, what are the mistakes they should not make, and what is it they need to do when they have these challenges?
It's a good question. So often you go to a doctor, they'll have surgery performed upon you, and then you're in this recovery period. and the doctor says to you, well, this will go away, that'll go away, it takes time to heal, oh, it may take a year and a half, 2 years. You wait a year and a half, 2 years, you've already exceeded your statute of limitations and your claims barred. If you have any thought, any idea whatsoever that you've had surgery and you're worse, that a doctor misdiagnosed your condition as one thing and you find out it's something else, you have nothing in the world to lose to contact a medical malpractice lawyer. But you have to get someone who has a tremendous amount of experience in it. So many lawyers, they do this, they do that. You need a law firm that has specialists in medical malpractice. You got to remember, the lawyers who do medical malpractice, like myself, we have so much medical knowledge. And we can tell you, many times just on the phone or after the interview in the office, whether or not it's worth pursuing. But you have nothing to lose to make the phone call. Nothing. The calls are free, and if there is a case, it's a contingent fee. So you have nothing to lose. And look at this poor guy who's suffering and is going to suffer for the rest of his life.
And there's something is just not right about that, certainly.
But you have nothing to lose to make the call. If it cost you money, then you would say, maybe I should make the call, maybe I should. Maybe the lawyer should get my records, maybe he should. If you had to pay or it would cost you money, but you have nothing to lose. And God forbid you're suffering for the rest of your life, call the lawyer.
Attorney Gerald Thurswell, thank you so much. Can't wait to see what happens. And you all never disclose the amounts anyway.
when we resolve these cases,
yeah,
they make us sign a confidentiality agreement because people don't want the public to know how much they've paid.
Right. Well, certainly the one thing people do want to know, that there is a victory for the family of Renisha McBride, as well as Mackenzie Cochran. Mackenzie Cochran, the young man who was killed by the security officers. The video is quite clear. Man on the floor saying, "I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe," asking them to call for help, and he did not make it.
And the response of the security guard was, "If you can talk, you can breathe." And they didn't let him up until he stopped breathing and he couldn't talk.
Which is incredible. Attorney, the number to the Thurswell Law Firm is 866-354-5544. That's 866-354-5544. Thanks for talking with us, counselor, and have a great holiday weekend.
You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.